I'm James Swanwick. This is the Alcohol-Free Lifestyle Podcast, where you learn to live a life of health, wealth, love, and happiness. Welcome to the show. I am James Swanwick. Imagine being able to quit alcohol and stay quit from alcohol with no willpower required. That is the 3-word book title, No Willpower Required, authored by a gentleman named Mike Hardenbrook, who joins us now from Chicago. He's 44 years old. He has a wife and 3 kids, aged 12, 9, and 3. And Mike started taking his alcohol-free lifestyle journey seriously about 10 years ago. And now, candidly, he says that he sometimes has a drink here and there. So he's not completely alcohol-free, but he's mostly alcohol-free. And we're going to learn how you, the listener, can implement some different strategies that work for you to live an alcohol-free lifestyle. Our guest today insists that there is no right solution. There are many solutions to living an alcohol-free life. And we're going to find out how today's guest went from frat guy and party guy to author of this book, No Willpower Required. Mike Hardenbrook, welcome to the show.
James, thank you. It's amazing to be here. And we didn't get to tell you, but I've been aware of you for a number of years. And I just think what you're doing is amazing. And like I said, there is no right solution. There's a solution there's no one right solution. There's a solution for many. And your solution is helping so many people. So it's great to be on here and speaking with you today.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate that. So just tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you live, your family, just so we get to know you, and then we'll dig into the conversation about alcohol.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll give you a little bit of a fast forward version, but I'm from Phoenix, Arizona, and went to school there, went to University of Arizona, majored in the art history and worked in Sotheby's of London for a while, and decided I really didn't like that and ended up throwing away all my winter clothes and moving to Puerto Rico. And in that journey, I sort of found, okay, I want to try and make money online. And at some point, I kind of cracked the code of the 4-hour work week when that was a thing, early on when it was a brand new concept. And so during that process, what it allowed me to do was travel, have freedom, and do whatever I wanted to do without having to worry about money or finances. And what that also directly leads into this conversation is that it allowed every night to be a Friday night. And so that was twofold. I was an entrepreneur, and as an entrepreneur, it's really hard to shut down. There's no one's going to tell you it's time to stop working because you're your own limitations as far as like when those working hours stop. And because I didn't have any accountability as far as a boss or when I had to get up or do anything, basically, the only way I could tell myself to stop drinking was to open a bottle of wine. And it didn't matter how much I had because the next day I could just do whatever. And so that went on for a while. And I met my wife, Priscilla, and we continued traveling. And I kept building lifestyle businesses that turned into VC-backed businesses. And I was getting into technology and really trying to level up. And things were growing and things were looking good. But at some point, I realized that my habits in the evening were not aligning with all my other habits. I was a fitness guy. I ate well. I was into mindfulness and breath work. I was into entrepreneurship. I prided myself on being a good partner. And yet here I was having this thing that felt really inauthentic in my life. And so at some point, I started to really kind of take it serious, especially when my wife got pregnant with our, soon-to-be daughter, Haley. And I realized, okay, I can't be like this in the evenings. I have to be able to be 100% all the time, whenever they need me. And that's sort of when the journey to take this thing serious. There had always been times where I'm like, a bad hangover or whatever. I'd say, yeah, I'd swear it off for a couple weeks or whatever like that. I never had issues with hard alcohol. I was never a day drinker. I didn't, have any rock bottom issues, but I wanted to be the best version of myself. And I really had a difficult time because the solutions that were out there was, you got to put a label on yourself and you got to give it up for the rest of your life starting today. And that just didn't align with where I felt I needed the help. And so I'll open it up to you from there. That was a little bit of a fast forward. So anything you want to dig into, feel free.
Well, actually, the thing I want to dig in the most is, why didn't you like working at Sotheby's in London? Because I did a art history course in London with Christie's, and I did an online version with Sotheby's, and then I did an art course over in New York City with Christie's as well. And I knew nothing about art history in 2023, nothing. But I just decided to lean into my discomfort or ignorance, I guess, and try and get educated on it just as a fun hobby. What didn't you like about working at Sotheby's in London?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good question. And that's really cool because you are probably, other than the people that I went into that, it was a master's program that that they offered that I've ever spoken to. So it's really cool that you did that. What I didn't like about it is I guess I had this perception of the tux hanging on the back of my office door and making good money and sort of like jet setting a little bit in the high life and around really nice things. And the reality of it is that the Sotheby's pay is not really adequate with what lines up in to be able to live in London well. And part of that is that it's a little bit of a rich kids club. Like a lot of the people that work there don't really have to work. So I'm competing up the ladder with people that can hang in longer because they're not there for the same reasons. And I think it was the point in that one day I had finished my master's, I was working there, and they asked me to just basically go stand on one of the floors as, one of the people that just stands in the corner where there's a room full of paintings. And I'm thinking, well, I did my undergrad, I did my master's, I'm scraping by here. And this is kind of like a glorified security guard position that I'm standing here for. And I think that was the moment that I said, yeah, this isn't going to be for me.
Yeah. So it's interesting that you didn't have a rock bottom moment when it came to alcohol, but you kind of had a rock bottom moment when it came to your professional life, I guess. And doing that, being a glorified security guard, I guess, at the Sotheby's Art Gallery was enough to inspire you to go and be a nomadic entrepreneur, a lifestyle entrepreneur, which is great, right? Because, sometimes these seemingly innocuous things can trigger massive, massive change in our lives. And it's interesting because a lot of folks that we talk to on this podcast did have rock bottom moments. But you know what? I didn't have that rock bottom moment. And yet I've been able to, somehow, help people to have a better relationship with alcohol, just sharing my story. And I think that's what gets overlooked a lot of the time, because people, I think, mistakenly believe that unless they have a rock bottom moment, they don't have a problem with alcohol, or it's not really compromising their life. But I would submit that that's a mistaken belief. What do you think?
100%. And I'd actually riff on that. And that I think that everybody has this idea that a rock bottom moment has to be something that gets real deep, dark, and, to your core, you question who you are and what's going on. And in fact, a rock bottom moment doesn't have to be deep and dark. It can literally be a really bad hangover, or it could be that I'm just sort of sick and tired of this. There's this spectrum inside of us. The mountain, how high does it get, for it to be that bad? And there's actually a parallel to PTSD in that PTSD, people think that you have to be in the battlefield to really have PTSD, but PTSD can happen in different capacities, and it feels just as big for people that maybe don't have it. Maybe they were just bullied as kids, but it wells up to inside of them to just the same level. And I think that can ring true a little bit for rock bottoms, or not even recognizing that there was a rock bottom, even though there probably or possibly was one.
What was your alcohol consumption, let's say, in the year leading up to the moment that you quit?
Yeah, it evolved. And so I came out of grad school I went into grad school. So undergrad, totally different dynamics as far as social, you're still partying and having. Grad school I was taking it serious. There's a lot of money. And so I stopped that partying and going out, but I was still clinging to this part of me that felt like I wanted to be that fun party guy. And so what I would do with my girlfriend and say, hey, do you want to get a bottle of wine? Even though that was very uncharacteristic for me to drink in the house. I wouldn't do that in undergrad, but it still made me feel like I was a little attached to that guy that used to be that outgoing guy. And so it started with just a couple drinks of wine in the evening that we'd share a bottle, and so maybe 2 glasses. And that over many years accelerated to easily a bottle and a bottle and a half in the evening, just to have the same effect. I wasn't getting wasted. I wasn't blacking out, but I was definitely consuming enough that I felt like shit in the morning. That's for sure. And I would get up, I was this fitness guy. So I would still get up and I'd still get to my things. And I'd go for these like 5-6 mile runs in the morning just to like get my head straight, sweat it out, like punish myself a little bit, now that I look back. And yeah, it got to a point where it was a really unhealthy habit that just would, you get through the day and you'd start to feel good again. And you'd get past that shitty feeling. And then I'd get my things done for the day and I'd feel good about getting that done. And it's almost like this bad memory started to get washed away. And by the evening you say, well, why don't I treat myself with something, and then you just repeat that cycle.
It's interesting. The why don't I treat myself with something implies that alcohol is a treat. It implies that that's a reward for a hard day's work or for stress or anxiety. And I get it why people associate that, because since we were a little boy or little girl, we saw our parents drinking and they said, oh, no, little Mike or little James, you can't drink now. You can drink when you're older. And so that right away is implanting the idea in the kid's mind that drinking is something that you aspire to do. Like there's a rite of passage there. You get to do it when you're older. And so that shows up again later on in our teens when we're at frat parties and getting drunk. Everyone's getting drunk with a smile on their face. And so again, we associate the alcohol with good times. And then we see sporting teams win the championship, like the NBA Finals or the Super Bowl, and the cameras go into the changing rooms and they're shaking up big bottles of champagne and they're spraying it on everyone and they're drinking it, which again creates this unconscious belief that alcohol equals celebration. And then we go to a wedding and we say, let's toast the bride and groom. And we hold up this attractively packaged poison in a nice glass. Yeah. And everyone's well dressed and looking very elegant and sophisticated at a wedding. And so we associate champagne with sophistication and elegance. And on and on and on and on and on, this ridiculous notion continues. The notion being, of course, that alcohol is desirable.
That there's value. That it enhances the occasion, that it's a special occasion. But there's nothing that is more special when it's included. If anything, it's muted.
I always say that the special occasion is every day. With health, vitality, good sleep, moving your body, conscious communication, healthy relationships. That's the reward every single day. But many of us over many years are mistakenly, I submit, living their life as if the bottle of attractively packaged poison is the reward, is the gift. We've got it backwards as a society, I feel.
Yes, I 100% agree. I mean, to the marketing point, it even goes deeper than saying these product placements are everywhere. It's that there is this tendency with the marketing to draw connections to special moments, to nostalgia. So, for example, I sort of remember this beer commercial where it's a father and a son sitting together and having this moment that's supposed to be memorable. And part of that connection was that they were both sharing a beer together.
Hi, this is James Swanwick, and we're taking applications for our 90-day and 365-day stop drinking programs. Clients are mostly executives, entrepreneurs, and investors who have tried unsuccessfully and repeatedly to stop drinking, but remain stuck in a frustrating cycle of stop, start, stop, start. Our programs are not AA, which has a reported 7% success rate. Our programs are not rehab, which has a reported 6% success rate. Our 90-day and 1-year programs involve a safe, fun, virtual community of high achievers with a process that boasts a scientifically proven 98% success rate of clients reaching at least 90 consecutive days alcohol-free. That's according to the University of Washington. We use the latest neuroscience and personal development processes to help rewire clients' brains around alcohol and minimize its importance in their lives. We will show you how to powerfully socialize with friends, family, and colleagues, what to say and how to say it so people don't mistakenly think you're an alcoholic or have a problem, and how to eliminate the temptation of returning to constant drinking so you break the stop-start cycle. To ensure client success, Project 90 can only accept 24 new clients each month. Some of those happy clients include John Keltner from California, who said, "I've lost 10 pounds." Susie Vaughn, a real estate broker in Tennessee, who said, "I've generated 20% more leads." Jessica Gaines from Kentucky, who says, "I've now got joy, focus, presence, and clarity." And Joe Worley from Michigan, who says, "My wife has the real Joe back." If you're an executive, entrepreneur, investor, real estate professional, attorney, doctor, and you're sick of the stop-start cycle and the damaging effects alcohol has on your health, happiness, and family, and you're ready to regain confidence, become more present with your spouse and children, reduce stress, anxiety, and irritability, sleep better, increase focus and productivity, and feel better quickly, you're invited to apply to become one of our 24 monthly Project 90 clients. Applicants can apply for an introductory interview by visiting alcoholfreelifestyle.com/project90. There's also a link in this episode's show notes. That's alcoholfreelifestyle.com/project90. Application interviews are limited and are conducted on a first-come, first-served basis. Okay, let's get back to the show.
Yeah. And look, I get it. History's been littered with fathers and sons sharing a beer together. But I would suggest that why can't you just share time together without holding the beer? Like,
I love that.
It's just, I mean, I took my father, Ron Swanwick, he's 79. I flew him over from the city where he lives, where I grew up in Brisbane, Australia, to London, England, in the summer of 2023 to go and watch the annual cricket tournament between Australia and England, which is known as the Ashes. To anyone who's not Australian or English, you won't understand. I won't even go into trying to explain cricket. But anyway, my dad loves cricket, and I flew him over there, and we went to the cricket. Now, if anyone who understands cricket knows that a cricket match can go for 5 days, and it's 6 hours a day of play and 7 hours in total at the ground, in which you sit in the grandstand and you watch cricket, right? In the sun, all day. Now, to an American, they'd be like, that sounds like an absolute nightmare. But to the Commonwealth countries who play cricket, it's a dream. And my father drinks on occasion, and I don't drink at all. Most fans who go to the cricket love to have a beer. Not just love to have a beer, they love to have beers and sit in the blazing sun all day and drink copious amounts of beer. And they have this English supporting group called the Barmy Army. And they take their shirts off and they sunbathe because, let's face it, England doesn't get that much sun. And they drink copious amounts of beer, and then they get more drunk as the day goes on. And everyone's laughing and having a good time and joking. And, it creates this idea that, there's lads, those fun kind of people having fun at the cricket, drinking their beer all day. My father and I sat in that cricket ground for days on end, 7 hours, did not touch one drop of alcohol. And it was the best connection I think I've had with my father ever, because we just sat there watching cricket, talking about the cricket, on occasion talking about life and family and things, but mostly just talking about the cricket. And we created, at least for me, I just felt this amazing special bond and connection with my father, just sitting with him. in the combined effort of watching a sporting event, we did not require the beer for us to create connection. And I didn't need the beer to create what will be a memory I'll hold with me for the rest of my life.
Yeah, I mean, that is beautiful and that's special. And it's not about coming together around the alcohol. That's part of the problem and the perception. And or even that a dry event might have less appeal to people. But it really is not about coming together for that, because that is not the connection is really what people that matters, right? The other thing is just there. It really doesn't hold any value. And if it does hold the value, it's detracting from the real value.
Yes. Your book is, excuse me, let me just turn my phone off, put it on silent mode there. Your book is called No Willpower Required. Tell us a little bit about the book, will you?
Yeah, and I'll add the subtitle, which is a neuroscience approach to change your habits with alcohol. And that's really sort of the staple of it, is that it approaches it instead of like with labels and addiction and very hard lines. It approaches it like you change habits with your diet, you change habits in, there's just so many habits that I could talk about that for some reason, alcohol is placed into this one bucket that is treated completely different, and it's a one size fits all. And what I found is that I think that there's this category of drinkers that I label in between drinkers, which is they're not a take it or leave it. They're not the kind of person that'll leave a half a beer on the table and then maybe have one in a couple of weeks. They're also not maybe the very easy to identify person with alcohol use disorder that very clearly needs intervention and change. These are the people that probably drink too much but want to change it, never have a rock bottom, probably have had, it's problematic, but it's not problematic that maybe people from the outside would want to tell them that they have a problem. They're the type of people that can't get through sober October or dry January, right? And there's so many of those people. There's such a large population. And I think that there's even within that category, there's subsets in that range. Some edge up against AUD and some edge up against the take it or leave it people. And the reason I wrote this book is because I found myself in that category. That's, if I had to give myself a label, that's where I would put myself. And the book of that premise is really written for those types of people that feel in a category that's underserved, because it's really, you have control over alcohol, or you're an alcoholic. That's sort of like the general perception that's now evolving. But generally, and at that time, it was you either go to AA or you don't have a problem. And so that's why I kind of wrote this book, is to address what are some things that you can do to change your perception of the value of alcohol in your life or lack thereof. And what are some of the steps that you can take with a habits-based approach to understand what's going on in your mind, your body, and your behaviors. And then what are some things for long-standing change so that you don't go back to the way that you were? So in my mind, there's, like I told you, there's no right option. Well, this gives you an option. I think some people will say, I don't ever want to drink again. And I think that's right for them. Some people will say, I want to get down back to a normal, quote unquote, normal level. If that works for them and it's sustainable, that's the right answer. Some people might say, I don't want to drink ever again, but at some point in their life, they have changed in some ways, because we're always evolving. And as long as they don't go back to the place that sparked the change, I think that that's the right solution. And this sort of gives you an awareness to get out of that mousetrap, and then mindfulness and really like self-awareness to know that you're continuing on the path that makes sense, that makes you the best version of yourself.
What are excuse me, what are some of the non-AA, non-rehab type solutions that you've in your research you found were effective for different people, different personalities?
That's a good question. I did read the 30-day. I don't remember the title, by Jack Canfield, I think it was. And so he did put out a book, and I thought that had some good tactics. But there's one thing that I really differ from, and that I think that it failed me, even though I didn't necessarily use it as I'm going to do step 1, step 2, step 3 in this book. But it failed me in thinking that 30 days is enough to really change a moderate to complex habit. And depending on who you ask, alcohol and your habits and your spectrum of where you are, how long, where you come from, the peers that you're around, how you view it. There's just there's too many nuances to put one single spectrum on there. But there's one thing around habit change that's pretty clear, and that is that 30 days for a complex habit to either be unlearned or a new one to replace it is not adequate in my view. And I think, a minimum with the O'Alley study that says moderate to complex habits will range between 66 and 256 days to actually make a change that's sustainable. And that's also, like I said, that's nuanced to the person. So that's just like a general range. But I just don't think that most of the programs that I see out there that tout the 30 days, by and large, at that time, that when I was doing research for myself, I think that they failed a lot of people in that way. And I know that in my own experience going 30 days, I didn't see the results that I wanted. It wasn't until I had longstanding cessation and abstinence from alcohol that I was able to take a step out and see what was going on. And then I could reflect back and I saw, okay, that's actually how I got here. And at that point, it doesn't hold that value. You're a changed person. It's not something you want to go back to. But at the end of 30 days, I was like chomping at the bit to end that 30 days.
Mm. What's the name of the study that you referenced there that it takes between 66 and 266 days?
The last name is Lally, Lally.
Lally, Lally, yep.
Yes.
Okay, got it. It's funny, well, not funny, but interesting. When I first created my organization, which is Alcohol-Free Lifestyle, the name of this podcast, back in 2015, I started with a program called the 30-Day No Alcohol Challenge. And that's how the company really started. And I put it up online, and it was $67 at the time. And it was just a video a day for 30 days and a Facebook group. That program still exists today. You can find it at 30daynoalcoholchallenge.com. It's put through thousands of people now over the years. And so, and I promoted it over the years, and it's transformed many, many lives because of that 30-day challenge. However, I have been very vocal and saying this, in my opinion, based on 8 years of helping people now. Really, it takes at least, in my view, it takes at least 90 days, 3 months, to really create long-term habitual change. So I applaud the mission of these 30-day challenges, of which I have one.
Yes.
Right?
I forgot about that. And I had seen it a long time ago. I thought it was awesome. I didn't actually do it, but I did register and I remember it. I didn't remember it when I was saying this. But interesting.
Yeah. And it's funny because, again, not funny. I'm just using that. It's funny because I don't know why I obviously have a habit. I need at least 66 days to change the habit of me saying that. It's interesting because I get on phone calls with prospective clients, and it's so fascinating to hear them try to convince themselves that they're going to solve their drinking habits long term by doing dry January, sober October, dry July, or candidly, my 30-day no alcohol challenge. And I always say to them, look, if you want to dip your toe in the water to get a glimpse of what it feels like to be alcohol free, do a 30-day challenge. I would much prefer you do a 30-day challenge than you don't try anything. Do my 30-day no alcohol challenge. Don't do it. Do a dry July, sober October. Go somewhere else and do it. That's great. Do it. But just know, statistically speaking, it probably won't be enough to create long-term / lifelong change as it relates to your drinking habits. And I say that repeatedly, and still people say, "Oh yeah, no, I think I'm going to be able to do it this time." And I'm like, "Okay, I'm rooting for you." But anecdotally, people who do 30-day challenges, they feel good, but then guess what happens? They get to day 30 and day 31 and they want to reward themselves with a drink.
Yeah.
And so when they're doing these 30-day challenges, the danger is that they feel like they're in a prison, right? Like they're using willpower to not drink, and that they can't wait to get to day 30 or 31 where they can celebrate with a drink because they deserve it. And in my view, that just completely destroys the whole purpose of why someone would do a 30-day challenge in the first place, because the idea is to have a better relationship with alcohol, to reduce or stop. And, I guess these 30-day challenges, including my own, require willpower. Your book is no willpower required, but I guess the ineffectiveness for most people or many people of these 30-day challenges is that it does require willpower.
Or at least rely on it, like white knuckling it through the 30 days. If that's your reliance, that's where I think you don't see any long-standing change. If you understand that just resisting is not the way and replacing it with a new habit and then giving yourself enough time for that habit to anchor in. Because here's the thing, like alcohol is an extremely efficient habit. And the reason that is, it's like the probability to outcome. So what's your probability? Like, let's say you want to feel good. Like most people drink because they either want to relieve pain or have pleasure. And that's a lot of things, right? Like maybe I want to feel good when I meditate. The probability that I'll feel good while high, it's not going to be guaranteed all the time. You might get frustrated, you might quit or whatever in the middle of the session, or it just didn't give you the results. You want to feel pleasure or relieve pain with alcohol on the short term, it's like 100% effective. And your brain is wired to seek out effective habits on the short term. It's not thinking in those long term, which we all know what the long term negative effects are. And so I think, you got to give that time to break this highly efficient habit that you've formed over probably many years for most people, or even decades. And 30 days is really going to be difficult to do that. And I would side more candidly with you on a minimum of 90 days. And my hope is to cite a little bit on the low side of that is just to get people in with a softer ask to then get a little more clear. And I feel confident that some people will need less than 66 days. Some people will need more, but I think we're getting close to the target that the people that need more have gotten to a point that it's not hard. You get to 2 months, it's a lot easier to go, oh, well, I'll go another month, because that's what happened to me. And that's what the realization and where the real switch turned on. It's like I went 30 days and I'm just going to go 60. And I went 60 days and I said, I'm going to go 90. And then I went 10 months and I didn't even think about it. And all of a sudden I said, well, what happened here? And so, I think it sounds so simple, but really time is on your side if you really want to make these changes.
In your research for the book, No Willpower Required, was there something surprising that you learned about alcohol or human behavior around alcohol that you didn't know beforehand?
There were a lot of surprising things. And I'll be honest, I tried to stay away from any research to other programs because I didn't want to be influenced, other than taking what my experience was and the research into documented studies. But one of the interesting things that's actually related to time is that they did a study where they were doing brain scans on people. And the brain scan was based around depriving people of certain things. So one was water, one was food, and the other had to do with alcohol. So they were doing these brain scans, and for proportion purposes to speak here, they held the food in front, smells of food and food in front of somebody that hadn't eaten. And the parts of the brain lit up around that craving to the size of a softball. And then they did it for water, the same thing. And it lit up to about proportion of a basketball. And when they did it for alcohol, and these were people that were sober alcoholics at this point, it lit up the size of a baseball field. And they found that it wasn't until about 2 years for those types of people that it really would start to reduce. And I thought that that was really surprising.
Yeah, someone used an analogy once that when you drink, the dopamine receptors get fired in a way that it's like the 4th of July with fireworks going off. Like it literally engages the dopamine receptors in such a way that it's like, this is amazing. This is incredible. Initially, right? For that first kind of like 25 minutes or so. And then as we do that increasingly over days, months and years, decades, the dopamine receptors don't fire as much anymore. And so you require more alcohol to try and get the same level of rush. Is that in line with your research?
Yeah, that's also another point that I did do research on and wrote about in that the dopamine effect. And that is that, generally we range in between something called NPD. So we have this measurement of dopamine between normal levels are 40 and 100. So 40 being your worst day, you don't want to get out of bed or whatever, 80 or 50 being like you're feeling good and it's a good day, and 100 would be like you just got a promotion and you heard it while you're sitting on the beach, and sipping whatever, not alcohol, but so you have this normal range, and then you introduce things like alcohol and drugs that will push the dopamine levels to 1,000, like way beyond levels the human body is supposed to produce. And so, yeah, that's also something, because you're going to associate those dopamine spikes with alcohol. And then at the same time, it's going to dip you down because you've depleted that, which will then over 12 to 24 hours draw you back to it from a chemical standpoint. That's the withdrawal. Even for moderate drinkers, withdrawal symptoms, they're so mild that people just think that the cravings are me just wanting it, but there's an actual like chemical thing going inside the brain where it's going through withdrawal. And no, it's not shakes. It's not, it might be a little bit of anxiety and anxiousness, but those cravings is really, that's part of the withdrawal, even at moderate amounts. Plus the sleep. Sleep gets affected for days.
Sleep gets absolutely destroyed.
Yeah.
By any amount of alcohol. And I did an Instagram post about, I don't know, 6 months ago, and I got I don't know if ridiculed is the right word, but essentially in the video I said you're actually better off drinking alcohol for breakfast than you are anywhere close to bedtime, because alcohol destroys your sleep, right? And I said, because, at least then if you have alcohol for breakfast, you'll have 16 hours during the day to process the toxins out of your body. And then finally you'll be able to go to sleep. Whereas if we drink close to bedtime, the toxins are still in the system, and et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, I posted this video. It must have been maybe 30 or 40 different influencers, social media people who clipped the part where I said, you're actually better off drinking for breakfast. And then they sort of cut it there, and then they kind of came onto the screen and they're like, okay, doc, no worries. And then they start, mimicking pouring a whiskey with their cornflakes and their morning toast. It was really, really funny, I have to say.
Social media.
But the reality is, drinking anywhere close to bedtime will destroy your sleep. It is
one of the studies I read, and I'm sure there's a lot of studies, but basically after 2 drinks, every single drink that you take thereafter continues at a 20% level to decrease the effectiveness of your sleep. So it is extremely impactful.
Mm.
And it's not just the next day. I mean, that night that you drink, it usually takes 48 hours at minimum for the body to get back to homeostasis. So that is part of the difficulty for people, because they think they can't sleep without it.
I read a study that suggested that if we took a strand of hair from someone's head, we can tell whether they had any alcohol within 7 to 10 days. It shows up in a strand of hair under a microscope. That's pretty fascinating. They'd have a tough time finding out whether I had been drinking or not, given my bald head. But I reckon we could do a test on you, Mike. You've got a good, full, thick head of hair there.
Go for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's interesting. I haven't heard about drugs. I didn't know about alcohol, though. Yeah.
Well, let me ask you just another question here as we kind of head for home here. But what do you make of these Hollywood celebrities like The Rock, Ryan Reynolds, Jennifer Lopez, having alcohol companies? So The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, has a tequila company. Ryan Reynolds has a gin company called Aviation Gin. And Jennifer Lopez, who says that she doesn't drink, has an alcohol company. I think Blake Lively, who's Ryan Reynolds' wife, I think she's even got her own alcohol brand, and she doesn't drink alcohol. I think that last one I might be mistaken on. But the context of my question is this. I really like The Rock and I really like Ryan Reynolds, and they do lots of great stuff for charities and they support people. They're great entertainers. It seems to me on initial impression they're good people. So is George Clooney. George Clooney seems like a good guy. He seems nice enough, right? But he had $1 billion exit with a liquor company, with Randy Gerber, his business partner. So for me, I'm like, I don't understand this. It seems so contradictory to me that these folks are doing such good in the world, and yet they are promoting what is essentially poison, which is so damaging to people, even if it's still people's responsibilities not to overdrink it, just to drink it in what we might deem a safe and responsible manner. Even if they're drinking in a responsible manner, it's still causing problems. Mm-hmm. So what's your view on this?
Yeah, that's interesting. I haven't really thought about it. I mean, there might be a few things going on, I think, especially from the point of view that you say, they do so much good. It might be coming from a point of ignorance, and that they don't really understand or have been close enough to any of the issues to see how destructive it can be for some people. And while it is poison, and I agree with that, undoubtedly, I feel like no matter what, that stuff's going to be out there. And it is, unfortunately, up to the consumer to live their lives and make it and figure out how that's going to play out. Is it irresponsible, I think, is what you're asking. It's hard to know. It's hard to know what they're being advised. They might be jumping on the bandwagon of, hey, this is a real moneymaker and it's going to align your brand and get more product placement. But how I feel about it, I mean, I'm a little ambivalent. I just don't think that they're not promoting it in an irresponsible way. They're just promoting it in the way that everyone else is. I just, I don't really have a good answer for that.
Well, let me ask you this question then. Do you somewhat or fully share my view that at some point in human history, we're going to look upon alcohol with the same level of disdain that we currently do cigarettes?
1,000%. For sure.
So then just to challenge you a little bit in a very fun, playful way, right? If I take your answer to my previous question, which was, maybe it's fine, other people doing it and it's up to the consumer. Surely if we feel that alcohol is as bad as cigarettes, then The Rock and Ryan Reynolds and Jennifer Lopez and Blake Lively are essentially promoting a substance in the same way that doctors used to promote cigarettes back in the 1950s.
Okay, so when you put it that way, I have more of an opinion on it. And yeah, if you're already making a lot of money, you already have a lot of opportunities, more opportunities probably coming your way than any normal person would ever have. Why choose that? Yeah, I think it is a little irresponsible, I would say.
I just don't think history is going to be kind to them. I don't think in a way where they're going to be accused of anything, but I think we'll just look at it in 30, 40 years from now. We'll just go, wow, that is crazy that these people that was, that we were just so, easily promoting alcohol, whether they're a celebrity or whether it's Super Bowl advertising or commercials or billboards. I just think with time, we're going to look back and just go, wow, what were you doing? Because we do that now with when we think of cigarettes.
Yeah.
Right.
I agree with that. And I mean, I have a lot of opinions about the future with alcohol and even bars. Like I foresee bars not serving alcohol at all. And people do want to have some level of euphoria or different altered states. It would be in less harmful ways like psilocybin or cannabis infused drinks. And they'll look at alcohol as being like, why would we do that? That's just poison, whereas there's a lot of alternatives out there and it's just not going to be the future. It's going to be the past.
Mike, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us on this call. The book that Mike wrote is called No Willpower Required. His journey of taking an alcohol-free lifestyle seriously for the past decade. I did reference at the beginning of the call that you said that, the beginning of this conversation, that you had a drink on occasion. Can you just to take us home here, can you just describe that and why you're okay with that and if there's any warnings about that? I'm so curious.
Yeah, I am a big believer on do whatever works for you. And so at times, very long extended periods without resistance, I will not drink alcohol. I don't plan on drinking. I don't go out and get drunk when I say I drink. But there's been times where, for example, I went on a hunting trip and there were 4 guys. They were special forces guys. And we were out all day. We got up at 4 a.m. to do this. And there was a Coors Light handed to me. And I just thought, it doesn't hold any value and I don't care. I just had it, and I didn't think about it. And I didn't feel bad about it. And it didn't bring me back to the place where I felt like I needed to make a change, because that change has happened. And the moment that I ever found myself thinking about it, wanting it, giving it value, that's where I would think there's a problem here. But those days are behind me, at least for right now they are. And I don't plan on going out for drinks. When I go out for drinks, I go out for soda water, honestly. Like that's just the way I live my life these days. It's hard to think the way it was, but it's really feels good the way it is now.
Where can we find your book, No Willpower Required?
Yeah, it's going to come out in January, and you can go to my website. It's my last name, Hardenbrook.com.
That's HARDENBROOK.com. All right, Mike. Well, thanks for sharing some time with us. Really appreciate you. Congratulations on your alcohol-free journey, and thank you again.